This is Jeffersons Section right here for the thing. Again, he's showing that there's really a sphere in there. Here's the basement floor. Here's the main floor where we come in today. We used to come in like rats down there, but now they're allowing us to go up the staircase and get in. And then this is the library located up there. Construction on this, just to note, the original dome was constructed out of a laminated wood structure, wood trusses. In other words, very, very heavy plywood, glued together and then pegged together. And it was a system developed by this Frenchman, Mr. Delorme, who published this book. Jefferson owned a copy of this. He sold it to Congress. We do have a letter in which he writes to a friend of his and says, do you have a copy of Mr. Delorme? We borrow it. We need it here for the university, for the dome. This is the way that the dome was constructed because masonry types of domes were just way too bloody expensive, and actually we didn't have the technology in this country for that. If you think about, though, now that we're inside this, this is the mind of the university. This is the library. He draws up the list of the 8,500 titles of the books that ought to be in the library. And, whoops, the order here, up in the rotunda, the composite order, the fifth order, the top order. There are the 5 orders I went through. Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, composite. This is the only place, the top order, the 5th order, the only place that it appears is inside. In other words, there is a symbolic meaning. And then if you compare this to, say, other universities, I just picked Yale here to pick on for half a minute, but it goes back to, what did you find when you went to every other American university campus? At the center, a chapel, a steeple. We're not actually the first public university. Both USC, University of South Carolina, and UNC, North Carolina, predate us. But where is the University of North Carolina located? Does that say anything? You ever thought of that? No, they were Presbyterian. They were Presbyterian, and it was Baptist down at USC, the University of South Carolina. Okay, on the pavilions, Jefferson designs or draws up all of the pavilions. There are certainly different influences coming in on these pavilions. Here's number 2 right here. What he wants them to be specimens for the architectural lectures, and so he draws in different types of sources. In this case here, this is that Palladio book I've been mentioning, the Temple Fortuna Virilis. It actually still stands in the Forum in Rome, and he picks up on that, not exactly as you can see, but it's right up there, the Onic Fortuna Virilis, written in his hand, and you can see it's an Onic order. He does all of this stuff. One of the things that is interesting on these, on the backs of all of these drawings, he is working out the specs on these, the proportional systems. He is doing some of his dimensions down to 1/100th of an inch. Now that might be something that we might do today with the computer, but you must wonder what those workmen thought about this back then. But anyway, he figures out all of this sort of stuff. Here's pavilion number 1 right across from it, as we just saw right here. This is the Ionic. You look across, got the Doric order. Drawing here is very, very interesting. Notice this thing. Damn! I forgot the chimney. He inked in the entire damn thing, and then he all of a sudden discovered, I forgot the damn chimney. That's glued on in the pack there. That's a little piece of paper that's glued on up there. Again, this is one of the things that really does distinguish us. I have had the pleasure or the pain, depending on how you want to look at it, of giving, well, far too many tours of the lawn, but especially giving tours to different foreign groups that the president's office, the provost calls me up and says, you know, we got somebody fancy coming, will you go give them a tour? And I take them out there, and of course, most Europeans are pretty suspicious about American taste anyway. But I get out there and they look, Ionic? Doric? Hell, we wouldn't do it that way in Europe. I can't help it. This is the way he did it. He very purposely puts up the different fronts. He knows the rules, the classical rules of symmetry, order, balance. You all know the Vitruvian Man, the guy inscribed in the circle, that type of thing. That's one of the principles of classical architecture. But then he breaks them. You got to know the rules to break the rules. And so that you get this sort of a variation, this variation that goes on. And I'm not going to go through all of these. You've got some wonderful, wonderful details. These capitals right here, they're actually carved in Carrara in Italy and shipped across the Atlantic and put up. Here we are at the end, sort of the drama. Again, this drama of this shift. I mean, you look from one side, you look to the other side. My goodness, what the heck is going on here? Just a note on this, on the builders and so forth. We have a list now of about, I think, 404 names that we're able to draw out of the records. We know that there are more than that because some people were working as subcontractors. Some people we know quite a bit about of the different individuals that worked on this. There is a website for this, and this is from an exhibit a couple of years ago where we're able to pick out, for instance, Carpenter Sam. That's his name, Carpenter Sam, slave. Worked on Pavilion 5. Up here, just simply Billy, Negro. That's all we know about him. And then the other people that we know quite a bit about. It was a huge construction project. And with the exception of the rebuilding of D.C. after the British burned it, and the Erie Canal across upper New York State, which just opened. Its anniversary was just 2 days ago of its opening. This was one of the largest construction projects that was going on in the country at that time. I put this in since I'm sure you've all heard about this and so forth. Some of the restoration has been going on. We've been doing quite a bit of research and are turning out that the white color is not original at all. The white color began to be introduced probably in the 1850s, and that the original color, this is Pavilion 10 right here, was this grayish type of color and not the white. This is it restored with the attic put back. Or here, this is a couple of years ago, well now 15 years ago. These are these two columns right here that were restored. This is really what the thing ought to look like rather than these white columns that we have here. If you think about the lawn, what you have is a series of different spaces. You, of course, if you have bad weather, you can stay covered. You have the open common space out here for lots of different sorts of activities. And then against this, you have the ranges and the hotels. And think about these and the way that these spaces are articulated. The arcades here give a very different sense than the march of the columns and so forth that go up and down the lawn, or the gardens. Now, none of the gardens are original. We don't really know what the gardens look like. They've all were restored back in the 1950s, 1960s by the Garden Club of Virginia. They are not original. But if you think about these walls, what is he trying to do? Now, there's local lore that hath it, well, this is a way of saving bricks. If you don't know, you have the structural curve. That won't stand up, but if I put it like this, we hope it will stand up. In other words, a structural curve, an engineering type of a curve. However, if you think about all the damn bricks that were here, is that really the reason? This is just supposition. He's intending this is a different sort of a space. This is a different place. And I would encourage you this afternoon, beautiful afternoon for this is the place to really enjoy these. Okay, this is the way that the place sort of looked, maybe. And I'm just going to conclude here with just a couple of things. Nothing stays the same. We've changed, we change, we change. In the 1850s, early 1850s, this huge annex is put onto the rotunda. Shifts in education, this type of thing. We have these types of things that go on. Not having a chapel here, what were we training? A bunch of heathens up here. There was a lot of concern about that. 5 years after Jefferson's birth, there was a movement to put a chapel. Nothing happened. But in 1859, this was proposed right here on the left. This was to stand right in the middle of the lawn. Right in the middle of the lawn. This is a fundraiser for it. It's 1859. There were some events that are going to happen in the next couple of years that preclude anything happening here. We finally did get our chapel. It's a wonderful building. I really do enjoy it. It is a wonderful contrast. But thank goodness it's not in the middle of the lawn. The fire. The big fire of October 27th, 1895. The rebuilding of the university by the preeminent New York firm of McKibb, Mead & White. Big changes, gigantic changes, which shows education changes, the university had changed. You get a new type of an entry that is in the north front here. This had never was there. None of this was ever there. This is all brand new that's put in there. This is what the interior looked like. This is the library. There was no middle floor. It was a library all the way from the ground floor on up, or the south end of the lawn down here. These buildings are very, very important, extremely important, because they are a part of an ongoing story about the university. And as much as I have been stressing here the historical significance of this, this is not a museum. This is a working institution, and we have to keep it that way. So the consequence is that what you do get is you get different sorts of stories going on. Old Cabell Hall, which was built as the public hall, and then about 1901-02, this big mural was put in. This is a copy of Raphael's School of Athens done by George W. Breck. This hangs in the Vatican in Rome. But if you think about this for a minute, you come inside, turn around, you sit down, you look at this, but what's behind that? The rotunda on up at the end. And who is walking towards you down this but Plato and Aristotle, walking from the library towards you, one pointing up, one pointing down. I'm simplifying this, but what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of our knowledge? So there are different stories. There are many different stories. We're out in the front, the wonderful murals by Lincoln Perry. What I'm suggesting is go out, experience all of this, not just the Jefferson stuff, but the other buildings as well. And finally, right here, of course, this is what on his tombstone he had put on up at Monticello. He specified it. This is Mr. Control all the way. If you were governor, if you were Secretary of State, if you were president, wouldn't you probably put that in your tombstone? Here was buried Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. You can read this in a whole variety of different ways. But here are two of the most fundamental elements, I think, in American democracy and the institution, which he also designed to carry this out. Thank you very much.